what if he lost his job? What if something changed? What would we have to fall back on? That he probably obsessively saved and obsessively looked at how to make savings in how he spent to sort of shore up our finances. So some people might say that's a nice problem to have, but actually when it's eating away at you day in, day out, and is one of those sort of things that's exacerbating and adding to the sort of the mental health struggles, you can see that can be a real problem for people.
Hello, I'm Kalpana Fitzpatrick, digital editor of MoneyWeek. Welcome to another episode of MoneyWeek Talks. MoneyWeek's motto is to make it, keep it, spend it. And in each episode, we help you do just that with our top guests who come with incredible insight and views that will help shape your finances. Whether you're looking for the latest trends, want to make sense of your finances, make more money, or just want to understand the world of investing better, then this is for you. In this episode, I have the pleasure of talking to Clare Francis, Savings and Investment Director at Barclays. Clare is also a former financial journalist, having started her career at The Times. While Clare is always looking for ways to educate people about investing, she is also an advocate for mental health and is a board trustee for the Money and Mental Health Policy Institute. Clare lost her first husband to suicide in 2011 and has since been committed to raising awareness about mental health issues. Her work does not go unnoticed. Thank you, Clare, for being in the studio with me today. I'm sorry for what you went through.
Thank you.
And I appreciate this isn't going to be easy for you to talk about. But so thank you for giving us your time. So mental health for men comes with so many social pressures and it can be really hard to spot. So while there are many things that cause mental health issues, it can be linked to money for both men and women. However, can we start by maybe talking about your experience with mental health?
Yes, as you mentioned, my first husband took his life in 2011 and he suffered with depression and anxiety. Now, often, and I'll talk a little bit more about the stats linked to sort of money and mental health problems, because they're often linked to problem debt and people in financial difficulty. And that is the sort of almost the worst end and the hardest end of the spectrum. But our situation was a little bit different, but equally not unique, as I know from, number of times I've spoken and written about this over the years, in that we were both lucky, we had good jobs, but money was still a big worry and anxiety for Mark. And he would, I would manage our finances, our household finances, but he'd be like, Claire, what do we owe on the mortgage and how much have I got in savings? And I used to call him the squirrel because he was almost so worried about what if he lost his job? What if something changed? What would we have to fall back on? That he probably obsessively saved and obsessively looked at how to make savings in how he spent to sort of shore up our finances. So some people might say that's a nice problem to have, but actually when it's eating away at you day in, day out, and, is one of those sort of things that's exacerbating and adding to the sort of the mental health struggles, you can see that can be a real problem for people. And it's not dumbing down the other end of the spectrum, which is people that are struggling financially and how that can exacerbate their mental health. But it just shows that there's a spectrum here, and this relationship between finances and mental health is intrinsically linked.
And that's the thing about mental health as well. You don't see clearly. And so a problem could be bad, but you don't quite know where to go, or a problem isn't as bad, but it may mentally feel like it's really bad and can consume your mind and your thinking. And you obviously haven't stopped trying to help as many people as you can. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do with the charity as well as with your day job at Barclays?
Yeah, so I've always, since what happened to Mark, wanted to raise awareness of mental health. So initially I started fundraising for Mind, did lots of events with colleagues. I worked at Money Supermarket at that time. And so that was my main focus. Then I did work with Mind, with the charity. I was on one of their business development boards for a few years. And then I had the opportunity to become a trustee of Money and Mental Health, the Policy Institute, which is a charity that focuses very much on this link between financial, debt problems and mental health issues. And their work is focused on the people that are struggling financially. And some of the stats I've got from their research shows that, 46% of people in problem debt also have a mental health problem, and 31% of people with a mental health problem say that their financial situation has worsened the mental health issue that they're struggling with. So you can see there's this sort of, they're sort of there together, and what Money and Mental Health are trying to do is how can we break that link and lessen the impact that they can have. And on the flip side, you've got people with mental health problems that then, because of their mental health problem, get into financial difficulty, if they're unable to work, or if their behavioural habits change, perhaps gambling, excessive spending. So it then fuels a financial problem for them. And there's 18% of people with mental health problems say they've got financial problem debt as well. And of those, 32% say their mental health problems have made their financial situation worse. So again, the work that Money and Mental Health are doing through the sort of the policy work and the change that they're trying to advocate, and working with organisations, financial institutions, utility providers, to try and help the way that government policy can support people, but also the way that companies can help their customers as well.
Absolutely. So I appreciate this isn't easy for you to talk about. So thank you for sharing those stats, and thank you for, being an advocate for mental health, not just men, but for women and families and households as well, because it does impact people in so many ways. And your experience that, you sharing this actually does help so many people. When it comes to mental health and money specifically, what are the sort of life triggers? Are there sort of things in life that could happen? Because everything could be going so well, and then something happens in life and your finances take a hit, and that can trigger the mental health problems. What are the sort of common issues that you see?
So there are sort of common triggers, things like redundancy, bereavement, divorce, or a relationship breakdown, where your financial situation is suddenly impacted. They can have they can trigger then stress, depression. It's a very stressful situation. And I think where the work I do at Barclays sort of leans into this is all around building financial confidence and building financial resilience. Because if you've got savings and investments in place behind you, it doesn't mean that those situations aren't still going to be hugely stressful and difficult to navigate, but actually you've got a sort of a buffer there to help you through it. So it can stop what's, a difficult period of your life becoming a crisis period of your life. So again, that's one of the things that we're looking at Barclays is how can we help people? How can we help our customers become more financially confident, more confident about their decisions that they're making, help them from the sort of the starting point of how to budget, how to get in a position where you've got money that you can save each month. Once you've got those savings in place, once you've built up those savings, how can you start investing some of that money as well? So you're thinking not only for your sort of short-term future, but that sort of medium to longer term as well. And that could be retirement, but it could be that, in 5, 10, 15 years' time, something completely unforeseen happens that you can't even, you can't imagine at the moment, but a curveball's thrown at you, because let's face it, life throws curveballs. Yes. But if you're in that sort of more of a financially secure position, hopefully it will be easier for you to get through.
Yeah, and what sort of signs should you look out for now? People sometimes say to me, almost jokingly, if they're a couple, we're always arguing about money. This is ridiculous. I'm getting married, it's costing me so much, and I don't know what we're going to do about money. Or I'm just walking out for this big holiday and I don't care, but actually it does affect them because they're losing sleep over the lack of money, or just don't really feel like they're doing something, but they're feeling guilty about it. How do you learn to, well, firstly, how do you spot the signs? What sort of signs should you look out for? And also, how do you prioritise things as well when it comes to your finances?
Well, I mean, it's often very difficult to spot signs when people are struggling, because often they're good at hiding
Yeah,
it.
absolutely,
And for whatever
yeah.
reason, they either don't want to share the burden, or they don't actually realise the toll that it is taking on them and their health and their mental health and well-being. But I think if if look out for friends and family members and people that are close to you. Is anything changing? Do they seem more subdued, more withdrawn? Are their spending habits changing? Maybe they've gone the opposite way and actually they're sort of spending irrationally, and that can be a sign of mental health issues as well. So if anything changes, spot for that. But often these signs can be really quite subtle, and you may not know or realise how what it's manifesting in terms internally from a mental health perspective, almost until it's too late, or until it's got to a point where it's a real problem and it potentially is a crisis point. And that's very difficult, because then you kick yourself and you can, if you look back, you say, oh, actually, yeah, they have been a bit more like this, or they've done that. But I think to try and sort of what you can try and do to protect yourself and help others is encourage conversation. So you mentioned that lots of people perhaps say they argue about money, but if they're talking about it and if they can work through that, that's the key thing. And it's encouraging, friends and family to just be a bit more open. And in particular, men tend not to be as open as women. So if you're in a relationship and you've got a partner and they're sort of just encourage the conversation. It doesn't have to be about money. It could be just generally, how are you feeling? How's your day? Is anything worrying? And if you get into that habit, then hopefully if anything does change and they do become more worried or stressed about something in particular, they're more likely to open up to you. And again, on the flip side, if you're feeling stressed, worried, and don't know, what to do about it, then talking to somebody can really help. And it doesn't mean you've got to tell the world. It doesn't mean, but if you can confide in one person, it can lift some of that pressure and help you perhaps see through the wood through the trees and just begin to navigate a way out. Because sometimes if you're feeling that you've actually got hidden debt that you're hiding from somebody, people don't know the extent of your financial situation, burying your head in the sand isn't going to help it. But actually, if you can talk to somebody about it, or ring your provider, your banks, your building societies, your credit card providers, utility providers, and just sort of, that can be a really tough thing to do, and it can be a hard thing to do. But if you can make that first step, then you've got people on your side to help you through.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. And one of the things that, I always say to people is, it's never as bad as it seems, especially when it's money. There is help. There's always help. And whether you're struggling, whether it is, because you are in debt or just because there's anxiety fueling your mind, there is always help, and it's never as bad as it seems. Although I do also appreciate that when you see someone else suffering and you suspect anything, it's such a difficult conversation. And actually that probably comes down to the fact that we've all grown up being told that money is a taboo subject. So we don't talk about it. So when we struggle, we don't know where to go and we're embarrassed about it. And I guess that really plays into it as well. And especially for men, I suppose there's social pressures. You can't be seen to be struggling. You can't be seen to be asking for help. So it's such a difficult situation, I imagine, for so many people. But I think the key message here from you is seek help as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And it's never too late. That's the other message. So whilst try and do it as soon as possible, also it's never too late. But I think also, if we take on your point, you touched upon about, if you're planning to get married, same for a holiday, or you have a supposed to think, oh, I'll spend it anyway, I'll worry about it later. I think, again, this is where the budgeting and the saving, I probably sound a bit like a stuck record, or she would say that, but this is where it can really help. Yeah. I got remarried last year, and it's sort of, I got reminded about how expensive getting married is. But if you've, it's hard to feel the pressure, and particularly social media. Once you're in that sort of looking at things linked to weddings, you're bombarded with things. It's like, oh, that's a great idea. That's great. It's easy for things to run away with you. But if you're saving for your goals, whether they're your short-term goals, whether it's a holiday, next Christmas, anything like that, or whether it's something in the next few years, getting married, building a house deposit, doing house renovations, have that goal to aim for. Also, when you achieve it, when you then think, actually, I've got the money to pay for this because I've been saving for it, again, that can have a really positive impact on your mental health, because it's a sort of an achievement that you've done it, right? And you've got this, whether it's memories from a holiday or a wedding or whatever, or whether it's a new place to live or an extension to your home, you've done that through saving and planning, and you've built up that financial sort of security. So this is where all of this all links together, and it's just worth taking a step back sometimes and thinking about finances where perhaps you might think, actually, I'll worry about that another day.
It isn't something, it's something that it's good planning, good goal setting, and having that feeling of achievement definitely is a good thing to have. You mentioned social media earlier, and I think one of the triggers nowadays for people feeling like they're getting into financial difficulty or genuinely do get into financial difficulty is FOMO, the fear of missing out. Does social media help? But even with you see influencers showing you stuff, and you get these feelings, I want it, and I have to have it, I have to have that life, I have to have those products. Is that adding to the mental health crisis in the UK?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's a huge amount of pressure on all of us. And I see it in my son. I've got an 11-year-old, and he's just got his first phone, and, and now he's sort of becoming, I mean, it's amazing how he knows how to use it. But, kids have this sort of instant, I want it now, I want it. And I'm trying to teach him, he's got a bank account and he's saving, and he's just bought himself something that he's saved for. Again, he's got that satisfaction. But I think there's a huge amount of pressure about lifestyles that people lead. And often, they're not real. They're there for their sort of social media account. Yeah. And I think the other worry is, and it's a particular area of focus for us at the moment in the sort of the saving to investing perspective, is scams and fraud. So the encouragement, the people that sort of see something on a social media platform and encouraging them to do something with their money that could be a fraud or a scam. So how do you know? Social media can be great and it can be really good. I know from our work that we do that it can be a great platform to share tips and help educate people and increase their knowledge. But you just got to know that you're taking the sort of the guidance from somebody that's trustworthy and reputable, because there are an awful lot of people out there supposedly purporting to be experts, encouraging you to do something, and actually they're not in it for your best interest. They're in it to scam you out of potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah, and you're right, it does fuel spending from a very young age, and that can something that can just go into adulthood and carry on, and before you know it, you're spending frivolously through social media plugins. So it's quite a difficult life at the moment when it comes to social media.
It's so instant. Yeah. Literally, it's a tap and you're done.
Tap, done.
Sometimes I've told myself back, that looks nice. And one of the sort of the tips we give in that area is sort of, if you see something, don't pay for it there and then. Put it in your basket, but go sleep overnight on it and decide whether tomorrow you want it, or take the time to do a search to see if you can get it cheaper anywhere else, or things like that. Just take that break, have that pause, so that if you go on to do the purchase and spend the money, then you've thought about it, and yes, I do want to do it, rather than just being sucked into this sort of the marketing hype that this is the best thing ever and you must have this face cream because it's going to get rid of all your wrinkles. So it's taking that pause and thinking about things.
Yeah, and I've done that. I mean, we've all done it. Taking that pause actually really does work, because I've seen something and I want it straight away, but actually I'm going to give it a bit of a pause. 2 days later, I don't want it anymore. Change my mind. Absolutely. So you'd be surprised at how easily you will change your mind and save yourself on some spending money, actually. So we discussed quite a bit about building financial resilience. You mentioned budgeting, which is incredibly important. Are there any sort of specific tools, and also what are your sort of top tips when it comes to building financial resilience? How do you get there? What does it look like to you?
Well, I think firstly, there are lots of tools. There are lots of budgeting tools available online that are free of charge to use. So if you're not that confident about sort of doing it yourself, but really what you want to be doing is looking at your spending, looking at where your money is going every month. Now, there are some things that are essential, your rent or mortgage, your utility bills, food, there's money that you've got to allocate that you need to spend every month. But then there will, inevitably be some extra expenditure, it doesn't mean to say don't do it. Of course, we all have a life. We want to treat ourselves. We want to be able to go out. But work out, are you being slightly extravagant? Are there any places that you can make savings and cut back to put that money into a savings account and begin, if you haven't got that sort of savings buffer in place, how you can start to grow it and build it. And once you get into that habit of budgeting, it almost becomes second nature. And if you have sort of direct debit set up to cover the bills, if you have a direct debit set up to move money almost on payday into your savings account, then you can really start to sort of build that money. And as I say, it just alters your behaviour. So you just become a lot more aware, I think, of how and where your money is going. And then when it comes to sort of times of the year, perhaps where it is more expensive, you've got some family birthday or you've got Christmas or you've got a holiday, you've got that money there to sort of fall back on. And then from there, what you want to be trying to do is build the savings up further to help you make yourself in a sort of a good position in case something unexpected happens. Now, that could be something like the boiler breaking down, or you need a new tyre on your car, or it could be you lose your job, or something that has perhaps even more of an impact on what's coming in every month, or what you need your savings to cover. And there's mix, there's no sort of hard, fast rule here on how much you need to have in your sort of emergency buffer. But people often suggest between 3 to 6 months' salary saved there, just in that sort of just in case pot. And once you've got that in place, and anything perhaps for those sort of goals, financial goals in the next 5 years, that's the time when it's worth taking another look, going, well, actually, can I get my money working even harder for me? So for the sort of medium to longer term goals, that's where investing comes in. Because investing, whilst there's a risk involved in investing because stock markets fall as well as rise, and often it's that risk that people, immediately gets alarm bells ringing, going, oh, it's not for me, it's I can't do that. But actually, over the longer term, so if you've got money that can be put away for sort of 5 years or more, and the longer it's invested for, the better, the chances are that money will grow by significantly more than if you just left it in a savings account earning savings interest. So this is where investing can be really powerful and can really help you for that sort of longer term. And often people think long-term retirement, it's decades away, I don't need to worry about it now. But the sooner you start, the less you need to be putting away towards it. And also, if your money's in a pension, it is locked away until a certain age. It's invested and it's locked away until a certain age. But if you invest via ISAs, if you need that money, you can get at that money. Or it might be that it might be there for your retirement, but maybe you've got children and you want to help them with university or get set up when they get their first job. You've got investments in place to sort of dip back into. So it can really help bolster and grow your wealth for the future. But one of the things that's a real problem in the UK in particular is that there aren't enough people investing, because we're a nation of savers rather than investors. And we've done some research at Barclays which identified that 15 million adults in the UK are sitting on £610 billion in cash savings that could potentially be invested. So this is money over and above that emergency buffer. It's money that could be working harder for their longer term and making, later life less stressful, more enjoyable, so that they've got the options to retire, or they've got a better standard of living than they would otherwise have. So again, you can see why the link between money and mental health problems continues, because actually that can remove a stress, it can remove a worry, because you've got that money building up for the future.
Yeah, and it's also, again, when we talked about goals earlier, it can really help you achieve something. Like I recently renovated my kitchen and I paid for it with money that I'd invested, but I don't think I would have done it if it was just in a cash account earning X amount of interest. It probably wouldn't have got me to my goal. So it's definitely something worth thinking about. And hopefully, I think a lot of people actually are thinking about this now, especially with the impending cut to cash ISA. So, and the government definitely wants people to invest, but I think there is a big there's a lot of work to be done before people will actually step into investing, and that is the educational element as well. And I know you talk about investing so passionately and are always doing things to educate people so that they can start taking their first steps. So when you do want to take your first steps, what are the 2 or 3 things that you should do if you're a little bit nervous about investing? How do you get started?
Yeah, well, we know that the common barriers to investing, we know through our own research and for other research, and I know you've written about this a lot, but, people are really nervous about it because saving is familiar to us and it's something, we're taught about and often learn about from a young age. But investing almost feels a bit like this sort of scary, risky unknown that only rich people do. And I think a lot of it is helping dispel perhaps some of those myths and showing that some of the things that are putting people off perhaps aren't quite the sort of the scary barrier that they perceive them to be. So building confidence and helping talk about investing in really everyday conversational languages, us having this conversation today will help. Because really, if you think about savings as being, savings are there for the emergencies in the short term. Investing is there for the long term. So really, investing is just an extension of your sort of saving strategy and saving approach. And what are you going to do with that spare money that you've got to try and make it work as hard as it can for you and your family and your future, right? So investing comes into play here. And actually, you don't need lots of money to start investing. You can start with Barclays, for example, for £50 a month, right? So if you are a little bit unsure about it, if you're not quite sure what to do, you can start small. And then as it becomes more familiar to you and your confidence grows, we often see people do get more comfortable and start investing and putting more away. The other big barrier is this sort of perception of risk. And I've got a stat, I'll just check that I get it right. But, 56% of people say that investing's too risky, and 43% are worried that it could mean losing all their money. So there's this big, they overestimate the risk. So it's like, on the one hand, I might earn more than I would if I kept it in cash savings. On the other hand, I could lose everything, right? Depending on where you invest, if you invest in a really highly speculative, high-risk way, there's a chance you could lose all your money. But for most people, it's more the value of your investments will fluctuate because stock markets, share prices move daily, bond prices move daily. But if you invest in we talk about diversification, if you spread your money out so it's invested in multiple companies, even if something's going down, hopefully something else is going up. So what we suggest is that people start investing in a fund. So rather than buying shares in an individual company where it is quite high risk, because if the share price goes in the wrong direction, obviously the value of your investment drops. If you invest in a fund, often a single fund will hold between 50 and 100 different companies, whether it's shares or bonds within that fund. So you're spreading your money out, you're diversifying, you're reducing the risk. And again, if you look to invest globally, so you're not just investing in one particular country, the UK or the USA, you invest globally. And again, that you can get funds that do this for you. We have some funds called ready-made investment funds, and other providers have very similar products.
Yes, they do, yeah.
So, they're there for you. They invest globally. They invest in a mixture of bonds and shares and cash, so it all performs differently. So they're giving you that exposure to give you a really good entry point into investing, that actually, yes, there might be periods where the value goes down, but if you're there for the long term, at least 5 years, hopefully you should see the value of your investments.
See the upside over time. And actually, there's so much data that shows over time, people that invest pretty much always do better.
And you also benefit from compounding. Now, you get compounding on interest savings interest as well, but this is almost where you're earning returns on your returns. So every year it's a bit like a snowball. And this is why time is really important as well. So if your investments grows by 5% one year, and it's gone up in value by 5%, and it goes up in value again the next year by 5%. This sort of, imagine a snowball rolling down a hill. Initially, it's quite small when it does one full roll, but over time it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the value of compounding has a huge impact, again, over time. So if you can keep your money invested, you will really see sort of significant growth that's not only a result of changing in share price valuations, but is also the benefit of all of those previous years' growth that you've had as well.
Absolutely. So start small and long term, and also don't panic, because I know people who have started investing and the market falls. This just happened a lot during COVID. I'm like, oh, my investments aren't doing very well. I think I might just take all my money out as well. So I think that's really important to flag as well. It's just that keep there for long term.
Yeah, and almost, and this is the difficulty, because it's quite emotional. It's your money,
right?
It
is emotional.
And sometimes it can be, if you're reading scary headlines and thinking, oh gosh, and then you check your value of your investments, they've fallen. Almost the automatic reaction could be, I need to get it out before it falls further. If you're in it for the long term, if you're in it for the right reasons, you don't need to get out. And often the sort of the biggest stock market falls are followed by quite significant rebounds. So if you pull your money out, you could miss out on that sort of rebound. So really, it's a case of getting your money invested and trying to resist the temptation to look at your investments too often, because that's when you notice those fluctuations. Where if you look sort of 2 or 3 times a year and take that step away, you get a much clearer picture almost of the overall impact that the investments are, how they're doing.
The apps make it a little bit addictive, don't they? Because I know that, it's so easy to manage things on an app. When you've got an investment app, how tempting is it to constantly look at it? And I think if you are that person that panics when you see things going the wrong way, then delete the app if you have to.
Or hide it. I mean, I say don't look. I mean, this is the other thing, with Barclays, with the Smart Investor account, it's in your app with your banking product. So you look.
It's hard to avoid.
Well, yeah, you can hide it. You can change the order and everything, but it's there. But it's there if you want to get at it. You can always access it and see. But equally, try and resist that temptation. I think the other thing with investing is that puts people off is because we talk about it being for the long term. A lot of people wrongly assume that means they can't get at their money, which is absolutely not the case. So we suggest that you want to be investing for at least 5 years. And the reason for that is you don't want to be needing to access the money at a point in time when the markets are down. You want to be able to sort of let it ride out market fluctuations. And so that's why your savings are important for those shorter term. But if you need that money, you can sell your investments and take the money out. It's not locked away. So I think that's another thing that's worth remembering. And also it's totally flexible, right? If you start by putting a certain amount of money away and your financial situation changes, and perhaps you've had a life moment, you've moved house, or you've had a baby, so life's become a bit more expensive and you've got less money to spare each month, just reduce the amount you're putting away. If possible, keep investing a bit, but you don't have to carry on investing at the same level. On the flip side, if you get a pay rise or you get a bonus or an inheritance and it enables you to put more away, you can do. So you can flex it to suit you and what's happening in your life at the moment.
Yeah. So you obviously, when someone's investing, they can put a lump sum in, they can set a monthly amount or just ad hoc. So it is, as you say, really flexible. Obviously, putting in a set amount each month, you get pound cost averaging. So that is the benefit there as well.
And that also helps remove some of the worry about whether or not it's a good time to invest.
Absolutely,
because, if you've got money going in every month, then some months the markets will be up, other months they'll be down. And actually, if they're down, it's better because your £100 or whatever it is will buy you more units of the fund that you're investing in or the share, that the company that you're investing in. So it's almost sort of, it's just drip feeding in, and you don't really have to worry too much about what's actually going on in the markets.
And in terms of confidence, now I think a lot of people just don't feel confident doing this. How do we overcome this barrier that I think a lot of people face, and it's preventing them from building financial resilience, building their wealth, or sometimes, or even if they have invested, I've heard of people say to me, I don't really know if I should take that money out. There's panic around that as well. What's your sort of advice and tips around building confidence and knowing when to make the right moves in terms of withdrawing that money from your investments?
Well, obviously, anyone listening to this podcast is doing a good thing, because you're hopefully learning more from it. But I think this is where one of the things we're trying to do a lot more is around the sort of content and the support that we can give our customers to try and help build that knowledge and understanding, so they feel a little bit more confident about what to do and how to do it, because it's that sort of not being sure. And when you're sort of putting your money into investments where there is a sort of a risk attached that perhaps you've not done before with your finances, it's understanding why people can find it quite daunting. But I think breaking it down and thinking about it simply is, in a lot of ways, opening an investment account is no different from opening a savings account. We mentioned ISAs. So you've got the cash ISA and you've got a stocks and shares ISA. There are other types of ISAs as well, but those are the main ones. And at the moment, we can put £20,000 into an ISA each tax year. And the benefit of an ISA is that any returns you make on the money within the ISA are tax-free. So it's a really tax-efficient way of saving and investing. But the ISA is like an account. So if you feel ready to start investing and you've not used your ISA allowance this tax year, then opening a stocks and shares ISA is the sort of the first step. And you can do that on an investment platform, which is the sort of the simplest and the lowest cost way to invest. So obviously we have Barclays Smart Investor, but there are other platforms as well. And once that account is open, then you can choose where to invest the money. And you don't need a different stocks and shares ISA for every investment you hold. The ISA is effectively just the wrapper. So you can have multiple investments within your ISA. And again, we see that a lot of people get stuck at that point. So they open their ISA, but then they don't know what to do, because suddenly they're faced with thousands of investment options and loads of different
overwhelming.
It's really overwhelming. So again, this is where us and other platforms try and help people, guide people through. So I mentioned the ready-made investment funds. That's a popular way for people to start, because there are 5 funds, and what you do is you pick the one that you feel most comfortable with from a risk perspective, because that's how they differ in the level of risk that they take. But as I mentioned earlier, they're all diversified globally and have a mixture of bonds, shares and cash. So that's one option that can be a good way to start. But we and others like us will have what we call a funds list. So it's a narrowed down selections of funds that our investment experts have identified as being sort of hopefully good funds for sort of long-term investment growth. Or you can, research tools, because some people like doing the research and want to spend the time to really sort of get under the bonnet and decide where to invest it. So there's lots of help available to you, and also lots of help, a bit like, everything that you produce, lots of content away from the financial institutions that is also designed to sort of help build that confidence and help people better understand, where to put their money, whether it's savings or investing.
Yeah, and I know the regulator's doing more to help people understand what is actually meant by risk. It's been, as we said, it's been quite a scary word for a lot of people and quite off-putting. It's important to understand it, but also it's just important to understand how investing works generally. And as you say, there's so many resources out there, the media, books, websites, and actually just providers themselves, that there's more information than ever before. So,
and I think it's going to, it's really good, because as you mentioned, the regulator and the government are wanting to try and get more people investing for their future. And I mentioned the £610 billion figure that we've identified at Barclays. There's a lot happening at the moment. There's a regulatory change coming into effect this year, which will make a difference. It means that providers like us will be able to provide more guidance to help people who can't access investment advice know what to do, really, and have the confidence about what to do. The government is also supporting a big sort of national marketing campaign. So you're going to see more, the conversation around investing, I think, is going to grow. And it's all about trying to break down those barriers, help build confidence, get more people investing for their future, which in turn obviously supports financial resilience and helps people have that sort of, I suppose, that greater protection that might mean that they don't suffer some of the find things as stressful if life throws something unexpected at them.
Absolutely. So, it's like you said, it all plays into a good mental health. And we obviously started the conversation about mental health. Are there any specific resources that you would like to flag that people can go to for help as well?
Yeah, again, I mean, we've touched on it before, and if you feel that you're struggling with your mental health, then please do get help. Obviously, there's the GP that you can talk to, but there's also charities like Mind, like the Samaritans, that can help with the sort of mental health side of things. If it's the financial side, charities such as Citizens Advice and Step Change, but also don't overlook your providers, your bank, your credit card providers, your utility providers. They can help you. And there are lots of tools and support tools, online tools that many banks now offer to help people manage, if they're worried about their finances. So not only can you perhaps sort of, if you're struggling to keep up with repayments and things, speak to your bank and come to an agreement, but there are things that you can do within, your app. So for example, at Barclays, if you're worried about your spending and you know that your mental health is impacting your spending, you can switch things off, so you're restricted in where you can use your debit card, so you can turn certain merchants off. So if you, for example, if you've got gambling problems or you're a late night shopper online, you can turn some of that off so you can take control. Or you can also apply to have sort of additional card holders or give a trusted family member access to your account so they can help you manage your money. So there are lots of things out there to help. So I think the key thing is taking that first step can be really difficult, but once you've done it, I think it should hopefully make things easier. And whether it's support on the mental health side or the financial side, there is help out there.
That's good to know. I think the bottom line is we shouldn't stop talking about money. You shouldn't be afraid to talk about money, whether it's building on what you already have, or if you feel like you're struggling in any way or worried about anything. Always talk. And despite what we were told when we were younger, it is good to talk about money. Thank you, Claire, so much for your time. I always like to end with a few fun questions, if that's okay.
Oh, you're springing this on me.
I'm springing this on you. I always get the best answers when I surprise people. So if I was to give you £5,000 today, what would you do with it?
Gosh. So what would I do with that? I am answering this from the position of having savings and investing in place. So I probably wouldn't spend it all, but I'd probably treat my family to a break, a bit of a holiday. Because one of the things, I suppose perhaps from my experience, but for me, the reason for saving and investing is to make memories and to have the life, and to do that. So I think I'd probably spend some of it on making some memories.
That's lovely. And also, that's important as well, that, money isn't always about not spending it. You should be able to enjoy it as well. What's the advice you would give your 20-year-old self?
What advice? So at 20, I've done well because I've already listened to my dad, who's taught me the basics about
Me too.
Credit cards are fine as long as you pay them off and all of that. I think it's have the confidence to take the opportunities that come your way and know that you're strong.
That's nice. And what's your biggest money mistake?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I am fairly sensible with money. I think I have splurged more at times than perhaps I needed to. I haven't necessarily got one big purchase that I did that I said, but I did go through a period, particularly after Mark died, when I was just like, I'm just going to go shopping and spend lots of money. And obviously, if I hadn't done that, I probably would have been slightly better off. But it's that splurging, it's reining it in, I think, that I could have probably done better at.
Yeah, I need to rein in on stop spending on skincare. I'm obsessed with it. Thank you so much.